Hey guys, I wanted to make a little bit of a follow-up video to the video I made regarding the $12 billion subsidy money that's coming. To the people who constantly want to tell me that I'm getting what I deserve, I'm getting what I voted for, and I had it coming this whole time, I just want to say, I did not vote for Donald Trump. Now, as somebody who is obviously followed by a lot of farmers and conservative-minded people, that's not exactly a popular thing to say. So I also have to say that I did not vote for Clinton. I did vote. The reason I did not vote for Trump or Clinton is because I didn't feel like either of those two represented the direction that I thought the country needed to go. Second, I am not whining. So for those who want to label me as a typical whiny farmer who is looking a gift horse in the mouth, I am not whining. I was stating my opinion on the subject. I really have nothing to whine about. My video was simply me explaining a little bit about what's going on and my feelings on the subject. It had nothing to do with me whining or feeling sorry for myself or being selfish about anything in the situation. My point of the video was that I do not disagree with what the administration is doing. I am not against renegotiating some of our trade deals, especially when it comes to working with China. The point I was trying to make was that I think we can renegotiate trade in a nicer way without having to irritate some of the people that we need to work with. China is a very, very, very important business partner with the United States, and I don't want to damage that relationship. Now, I understand that sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Maybe these are the eggs that need to be broken in order to make this omelet. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I just wish that we could have negotiated this trade issue with China without irritating one of our most important trading partners. When it comes to the subsidies specifically, I appreciate the fact that the administration has recognized the damage that has been done to the agriculture industry in the United States because of this, and they are willing to try to do something about it. My point was that most farmers would rather take their lumps and be a part of the solution rather than taking more taxpayer dollars. We would much rather see actual trade negotiations taking place rather than having to deal with putting tariffs on people and trying to bully people around like a bunch of schoolyard bullies. My personal opinion of Donald Trump is that he's a lunatic, but maybe he's just the lunatic that we need to finally stand up to people and finally try to fix some of these issues that we're well aware that we have. Maybe his tough tactics will work. I don't know. I'm awfully nervous about it, but I'm also remaining optimistic that maybe he will finally be able to make some changes. Good morning, Digi. How you doing? Okay, so what about NAFTA? Now we've made our neighbors upset. That one really hurt. So if I'm so against this subsidy, then why don't I just not take the money? Well, I explained that in my last video. If I don't take that money, I am immediately at a competitive disadvantage with the neighbors, because the fact is that we're all in competition out here. If my business doesn't cash flow as good as the neighbors, I can't pay the same amount of land rent as they can. And if I can't pay the same amount of land rent, I lose land, the efficiency of my business goes down, I end up being over-equipped, and the business can fail. Because we're in direct competition with each other, we basically all have to take that money, because the ones who don't are putting themselves at an immediate disadvantage. That's why I would just rather not have this subsidy in the first place, not have to deal with it. I think most people would take that if it was being handed to them, but is it going to make or break my operation and what we do here? No, it isn't going to make that big of a difference. I've lost way more than double that already because of the hit that the prices have taken. That doesn't mean that I deserve to get half of it back. I understand that. That's the point I'm trying to make here. On a side note, I do like nice sunglasses. I actually buy a brand new pair of these about every 3 to 4 years. Now on to the Chlorpyrifos issue. A few weeks ago, a court ordered the EPA to ban the use of Chlorpyrifos here in the United States. Now the EPA can appeal that, they can change that, but it has been ordered by the courts that Chlorpyrifos be made illegal. Quick history lesson on Chlorpyrifos. It is a broad spectrum insecticide that is popular in the use of things like almonds, cranberries, apples, Some of the orchard farmers, they use it because it's very effective, it's very affordable, and it is a popular thing to be used on some of our fruits and vegetables as far as insect control and worm control. As corn and soybean farmers, it's not that big of a deal to us right now. We have used Chlorpyrifos the last couple of years because the bifenthrin we've been using to kill our soybean aphids seemed like it had been less effective lately, so we did switch to Chlorpyrifos. We don't like to use it if we don't have to, but the bifenthrin just seemed like it wasn't doing nearly as good a job. Another option at this time for us to control soybean aphids would be neonicotinoids, or neonics we call them for short. I'd really hate to see that because we do know for sure that neonics are harmful to honeybees. I'd really hate to see them be widely used when it comes to controlling bugs in soybeans. I just hope that we can come up with an alternative that's better for the environment than neonics. We can't say that it caused all this chaos 5 years ago with the decline of them, but we do know it is harmful to them. I'd like to see us stay away from neonics. Chlorpyrifos had previously been made illegal to use inside the homes. Years ago you could actually use it to spray termites, ants, flies, things like that in household chemistries. And that was banned for indoor use years and years ago. It's now only available in most states, I believe, as a restricted use pesticide, meaning that only licensed applicators can purchase and apply it. More recently, back in 2015, the Obama administration had considered banning the product altogether, and they had the EPA looking into a potential statewide ban, or a federal ban. And what the EPA scientists found was that it is harmful to children, specifically when it comes to neurological development. And they did recommend, the EPA scientists did recommend banning Chlorpyrifos. What had happened before that ban went into place and before it was actually ruled on whether or not they were going to ban it, was that the administration changed hands. Trump got into power. He put Scott Pruitt in charge of the EPA, and Scott Pruitt scrapped the whole deal, basically saying that there was not yet enough evidence to feel confident enough to ban Chlorpyrifos at this point, and so he basically tabled it and said, we're not going to do that yet. Recently, a court looked at it and did order the EPA to now ban the use of Chlorpyrifos within 60 days. So how do I feel about it personally as a farmer? It's not going to have a huge effect on me as a farmer because we do have some other options. Maybe they're not as affordable, maybe they're even less safe, but at this time I feel fairly confident that we'll be able to control our soybean aphids in a different way. As a father, if we're causing neurological developmental issues with our children, then that's something we need to be aware of, and we need to make sure that we're taking the product away so that we can't do more damage to the children in this country. However, I'm not exactly sure where to go to find the science that I trust, because I don't know that I really fully trust the EPA and their scientists to tell us what's safe and what's not. So how do I know whether Chlorpyrifos is actually harmful or not? I don't know. As a father and as a person who cares about public safety, in my opinion, it needs to be very, very closely looked at, because it is something we need to be concerned about. We need to make sure that we're making healthy choices for this country, and public safety and public health has to come first. Okay, so moving on to glyphosate, or Roundup, and the situation out in California where a court ordered Monsanto to pay $289 million to a single worker who had worked at a school district for 2 years applying glyphosate or Roundup and had developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. First off, there is actually zero credible, good scientific evidence that glyphosate causes cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Most of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, from what I understand, we have no idea what causes it. Unfortunately, finding the scientific evidence was not the main objective in that courtroom. Scientific evidence lost out in that situation. My condolences, of course, to Mr. Johnson and his family for his illness. I'm sorry that you have to go through that. Mr. Johnson worked for 2 years for a school district applying Roundup some of the time, and his lawyers have claimed that it caused his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I've worked with Roundup my entire life, and just about everybody I know has worked with Roundup their entire life, and I don't personally know many people who have ever developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That being said, if the data and the scientific evidence were there to say that glyphosate causes cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, then I would certainly support the fact that we need to look into this and possibly consider not using that chemistry. The one situation where glyphosate for a certain period of time was ruled to be a possible carcinogen, the IARC recanted that statement due to finding scientific evidence that had been left out when they decided that decision. They now took it off the list of carcinogens. Glyphosate is less toxic than sunshine, bacon, beer, aspirin, coffee, you name it. There are all kinds of more poisonous things that we ingest every single day than glyphosate. If you don't believe that, go ahead and look up the LD50 numbers. That is a scientific number that is used to rate the amount of something that it takes to kill 50% of the test subjects. In fact, the reason that glyphosate is so effective when it comes to killing plants is because it blocks an important pathway that the plants have to take nutrients from the roots up and into the plant. I don't have roots, I don't have that pathway, and neither do any of you. Roundup, as its killing mechanism, can't harm you or I in the same way that it would kill a plant. In this situation, I believe this was a classic example of somebody who had really, really good lawyers who figured out how to exploit this emotional situation and sell it off to a jury that's made up of people who are not scientists and don't really understand the full scientific aspect of it. The best example I have of that was in the lesions on Mr. Johnson's hands. His hands were full of lesions that he claimed happened because of a couple of Roundup spills. My hands have had plenty of concentrated Roundup on them. I don't have any lesions. And in fact, Roundup is not absorbed easily through the skin. I can't say for sure that those lesions on his hands were not caused by glyphosate, but I believe that the science shows pretty handedly that they most likely were not. Just look at this genetically modified ear of corn. Needs butter and salt.